Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, Facebook. Happy Mother's Day. Sunday, May the 10th, 2020. And the time is currently 12:27 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. A nice, easy Sunday broadcast. I think I've hit at least 50 of these things by now. Well, just to get the grim shit out of the way first, the world is now at 4,157,135 positive or confirmed cases. And according to worldometers.info/coronavirus, there have now been 282,825 coronavirus related fatalities. The United States remains, as always, at the top of the list by far. The United States is currently reporting 1,357,076 positive or confirmed cases. Out of that number, there are being reported 80,423 deaths. 80,000. So we're at 1.35 million cases, whereas the next highest ranked country by number of cases is sitting at 264,000 cases. That's Spain, 264,663. In the state of Washington, we are looking at 17,426 cases. 922 fatalities are currently being reported in our state. Again, I brought this up a couple days ago. Tennessee is reporting nearly 14,768 cases to our 17,426. That is a narrowing gap. And while we are over 900 cases, Tennessee is reporting less than 250. So while they have an infection rate statewide, which is, well, an infection number, which is close to being equivalent to ours, they are reporting just over a quarter of the overall cases that we are. That's a pretty big disparity. Why is the mortality rate in Washington so much higher than the mortality rate in Tennessee, who seems to have almost as many cases as we do? It's hard to say. I have some opinions about it, but I don't know. When it comes to the type of work that I do for a living, retail, we have got now some solid information about how retail establishments can operate. When Governor Inslee announced that he was going to extend the statewide lockdown to the 31st of May, and when he introduced the phased reopening approach, there was some confusion about phase one. Were we already in phase one? He said something in that press conference that suggested that phase one might not be fully implemented until the middle of the month. Certain news outlets were saying that we were already fully into phase one, but I don't think that was the case. And that seems to be reinforced by the following memorandum that was released by the governor 2 days ago. May 8th, the subject of this memorandum is partially resuming the retail industry. This memorandum serves as the criteria for partially resuming the retail industry under phase one and is effective as of May 8th. So the governor did say that there should be at least 3 weeks between the phases of this plan. And the phase one, the retail portion of phase one only began as of 2 days ago. Phase one, curbside retail COVID-19 requirements. This was released on the same day as the memorandum. So as of 2 days ago, Employers must specifically ensure operations follow the main L&I COVID-19 requirements to protect workers, including educate workers in the language they understand best about coronavirus and how to prevent transmission, and the employer's COVID-19 policies. Maintain minimum 6-foot separation between staff and customers in all interactions at all times. When strict physical distancing is not feasible for a specific task, other prevention measures are required, such as the use of barriers, minimize staff or customers in narrow or enclosed areas, stagger breaks, and work shift starts. The employers are to provide personal protective equipment such as gloves, goggles, face shields, and face masks as appropriate or required to employees for the activity being performed. Cloth facial coverings must be worn by every employee on the job site unless their exposure dictates a higher level of protection under Department of Labor and Industry Safety and Health rules and guidance. There is a website that you can click on if you want further information about that. Ensure frequent and adequate hand washing with adequate maintenance of supplies. Use disposable gloves where safe and applicable to prevent transmission on tools or other items that are shared. I work in a music store, so if a customer wants to play a guitar or a drum set, how are we going to do that? If they want to try out a piano, how are they going to do that? The employer is to screen employees for signs and symptoms of COVID-19 at the start of each shift. Make sure sick employees stay home or immediately go home if they feel or appear sick. Cordon off any areas where an employee with probable or confirmed COVID-19 illness has worked or touched surfaces until the area and equipment are cleaned and sanitized. And then there's a link where you can go to see exactly how to sanitize things like that. A worker may refuse to perform unsafe work, including hazards created by COVID-19, and it is unlawful for their employer to take adverse action against a worker who has engaged in safety-protected activities under the law if their work refusal meets certain requirements. Employees who choose to remove themselves from a worksite because they do not believe it is safe may have access to certain leave or unemployment benefits. Employers must provide high-risk individuals covered by Proclamation 2046 with their choice of access to available employer-granted accrued leave or unemployment benefits. So these are the restrictions of how reopening the retail sector of our local economy is going to look. These are very restrictive. And I'm curious to see how a music store might implement these to such an extent that a retail sales associate might be able to return to their job and resume earning the kind of money that they were before this whole thing began. There are curbside retail operations where a customer can call or make an order online, and then the order can be brought to them, and there's a whole list of requirements for exactly how that is supposed to work. But again, these are orders that are being placed on a computer or by phone, and the employee is only there to bring the order to their car. In-store operations should be limited to those employees who are responsible for the operations required for curbside delivery. Employees should adhere to all social distancing, hygiene, and sanitation guidelines. Customer transactions may be handled through multiple channels, including phone, online, or point of sale. Point of sale, that would be pretty tricky in my particular situation. Then there's a whole list of curbside retail specific health protocols. I'm going through all this information in an effort to understand how that would translate to me going back to work. And according to these guidelines, it doesn't appear feasible. The employer would have to procure all necessary personal protective equipment, would have to regularly and constantly enforce social distancing, the sanitation of surfaces, handling of physical items at all times. To adhere to such requirements would constitute the bulk of the manager's focus and of the employee's focus. We couldn't just relax into the interactions of the job because the priority would be to adhere to these guidelines. No curbside retail establishment may operate until they can meet and maintain all the requirements in this document, including providing materials, schedules, and equipment required to comply. Additional considerations are made as suggestions and may be adopted as appropriate. And then there's a way in this document where people can report violations to higher authorities. So as of 2 days ago, we now have more information about how people in the retail sector could return to work. But retail encompasses so many different situations, so many different types of merchandise. And a music store is a very, very hands-on environment. I've said it before. I want to go back to work and I want to be safe, but it just looks like phase 1 is not going to be where I can go back to work. Phase 2 or phase 3 maybe. Because the governor announced phase 1 about a week and a half ago now. And it wasn't until only 2 days ago that we actually got some solid information about what that means for our kind of work. And there it is. So, ongoing testing, ongoing assessment of the situation on the part of the state government is going to be the determining factor in when we graduate from phase 1 and move on to phase 2. And I wonder if it'll be another 10 days after that begins when we actually see what that looks like. That's what happened with phase 1 here. So at least there's information coming out. I suppose that can be looked at as progress. Well, as is usual for Sundays, I'm just going to keep this one short. There's a lot going on in the news, but there are other things happening. The General Flynn case being dropped by the Department of Justice has nothing to do with coronavirus, but that's dominating a lot of headlines right now. There's a new drug out there called remdesivir. I think I touched on that a few weeks ago. It looks like it's an encouraging thing for a therapeutic, not a vaccine. And there's really not a whole lot more development in the medical front as of yet. I'm more curious about the ongoing effort to determine exactly how widespread the infections have been. And there's a growing idea out there that the whole lockdown strategy has been an overreaction. At the beginning, an overreaction could be understandable, but as new information emerges about the real nature of this disease, it's time to reevaluate things, I think. So, well, I'm going to leave things there for today and get back to practicing piano and planning for the future. Thanks for listening and be good to each other.